Yeah, and I also am resonating a lot with what you're saying, and I think part of that, and correct me if this is not the case for you, but I'm feeling like because we're both bass players and we're used to the bass being buried in a mix.
Yeah.
Like the bass is the first instrument that seems to get sacrificed in like rock, at least when we were growing up, maybe 15 years ago, when before like now the aesthetic is much more low end, right? But like when we were, in bands 15 years ago, the bass was getting buried in those mixes. Let's put it that way. And so like we're very cognizant of like letting the bass being heard, let the bass be heard at least, And so maybe that like is a bug in your head of like, let's make sure all these people get hurt in the mix.
100%. And the way I approach it, like as I'm mixing, I ask myself, okay, is this instrument loud enough? Is it too loud? All right, cool. Is this instrument loud enough? Is it too loud? Right. When I get to the bass and try to figure out like how loud should the bass really be or how present should it be, I always go back to 15, 16-year-old me listening to records, trying to learn how this bass player played this particular part and struggling because it's so quiet.
Yes.
And so a big approach for me for that is I want to have the bass not take over the song, of course. That usually the bass is not the focal point of the song. Sometimes it is. But I want to, at the very least, I want the teenage kid trying to learn how to play this song in, however long from now when the song comes out or becomes a classic or whatever, like the songs that I listen to, right?
Yeah.
I want them to be able to transcribe it and learn how to play this without like struggling too much like I did.
I'm so glad this resonated with you because I feel like this is something I don't even think I've ever shared this on the air because it's something that like I think is so subconscious. It's like not even something I like would admit even. And I've learned to kind of let the bass go a little bit because I used to be way too hard on it. And now like you understand like there has to be like that right amount of kick and bass and there's a balance there. But like still like I want to make sure that the bass doesn't get lost. Like that's something that's like still ingrained in my head, And it's not just the bass, it's like everything,
Yeah, and funny thing is, I want to bring up Motown real quick.
Because man, when you talk about James Jamerson, I'm in. You just bring that up, I'm in. That's my jam.
Here's the thing: many people think of that music as very bassy, very like, oh, the low end is huge, right? It really isn't. Give it a good listen. There's no subs.
Yeah,
and I'm, and you've probably done this already.
True.
Some like talking to mostly to the listeners. Compare that to any modern song from the last 10, 20, 30 years or more. Motown stuff, they have no sub, yet the bass really comes through really loudly, and I think it's because there's not a lot of subs to begin with. The balance engineers were able to actually turn the bass up.
Yeah.
And really where the bass lives is the mids, the low mids and the mids. That's where all that presence is in the, flat wounds on a P bass kind of thing.
That's the 600 hertz and the 100 hertz.
Yeah.
Popping through.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And those kick drums are very small. The Motown kicks are very tiny, and the bass envelops it, right? Like it's
right.
You're totally right.
Yeah, the kick drum is there as I don't know, a feeling more than anything else.